I'm also a firm believer in if all we focus on is driving value for the business and for shareholders, that we will frankly rot out at the core. And so one of the things I really focus on with the team is understanding what motivates people, what incentivizes people, where they feel connected, and making sure I bring that. So I'm excited to talk to you guys today.
Welcome to the HumanTel podcast, where our category-leading insights professionals share a little bit about what we're learning here at HumanTel. And we do that alongside cultural experts who provide additional perspective so we can all better understand the why people do what they do. I'm Lolita Vice President of Brand Partnerships at Genius and host of the HumanTel podcast. So, professional vitality. In 2026, I don't think it's about grinding harder, right? It's about knowing when to sprint, knowing when to pause, and how to stay creatively charged in a world that never hits stop. Our leadership quality that most sharply separates optimistic professionals from everyone else isn't about clearing obstacles. It isn't setting vision. It's fostering connection across teams. And it outpaces every other leadership behavior we've measured here. And that's just one finding from a study that we've conducted with the HumanTel Collective of more than 2,000 American professionals. In a world where the pace of decision-making isn't letting up, AI is changing our roles seemingly every day, and we are returning to office. Hold your applause. We set out to understand how organizations, how leaders, and the spaces where we come together for work can foster a sense of re-enchantment with our careers. I'm joined today by two members of the HumanTel Cooperative, Eileen Bennett and Joetta Gobell. Welcome to the both of you.
Thank you.
Let's start with you, Eileen. Could you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I want to really show gratitude for the intro because it's so timely of a topic. And I also want to shout out your executive unicorn reference because it's it's just reflective of the conversation that we're going to have today. I spent over 3 decades sitting with leaders close to the realities of the challenges that it takes to lead. And I've seen the best of leaders lift people up around them. And I've seen leaders really wreck the very people that they need to deliver performance and results. So I've been sitting at the intersection of people, culture, and performance as a chief people officer over the past 3+ decades. I've been trusted with the confidence and the vulnerability of leaders under this constant, relentless pressure and ability to navigate all the change that's happening. And, leaders don't fail because of the work or the commitment or the drive. They break when they start to self-edit themselves to meet the conditions around them. So at this moment where pace and pressure are so intense, AI is not only transforming jobs, but they're also transforming the work and what it means to work. So what I'm doing now as an executive confidant and leadership coach is I'm sitting with these leaders who are really committed to be the best that they can be during these times and creating the space for them to unpack the pressure so that they can start being leaders and not performing leadership. And that's the work that I'm really passionate about right now.
I love that. Unpacking pressure. I like that. What about you, Joetta? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so right now I am the SVP of Data Strategy and Insights at People Inc. And what that means is that I run the measurement team, the research and insights team, the primary research team that does all of our qualitative and quantitative work with our user communities, as well as our data security and privacy group. So, And I think the reason why I'm here today is that I manage a team of around 50 people in the US and then another cohort of folks in Bangalore, an awesome team in Bangalore. And really, I report to the Chief Innovation Officer, which means that we are necessarily at the front lines of things always changing and figuring out how we are going to pivot and how we're going to continue to drive value for the business. But I'm also a firm believer in if all we focus on is driving value for the business and for shareholders, that we will frankly rot out at the core. And so one of the things I really focus on with the team is understanding what motivates people, what incentivizes people, where they feel connected, and making sure I bring that. So I'm excited to talk to you guys today.
I love that. I always say everyone has their own individual type of currency, and it's very important to know everyone's currency, especially in the workplace, right? So why this work and why now? Eileen, you were a co-author of this work. Thank you. So while you were going through this, could you share with us what questions you were actually trying to answer that maybe other workforce research wasn't?
Mm-hmm. There's been so many phases of research on the people side. There was, decades ago, it was all about employee satisfaction. Then it became all about employee engagement. And I found that didn't get at the root of really what's going on for people. So part of the survey was to really go layers deeper, to really understand what's behind all of that, because those surveys didn't really get at that. And now more than ever, we're really up against what I'm calling is a capacity constraint. And our leaders tending to what's the impact of their teams on this, what I call faster, better, more environment that we're now all working in. And I don't think, the answer isn't really the one that I was hoping for, because I don't think they're really tending to that, because they're so focused on the results and the output. And I wanted to understand from a leader's perspective and from the teams that they're leading, what really matters here. And do they have the resources? Do they have the visibility? Are they being seen and cared for in a way that's going to actually deliver the results? And Joetta, similar to what you're saying, like if we're only leading for performance and not tending to the betterment of the people who are actually delivering the performance, we're going to fall short. And so the survey really was focused around that. And that's what I was most interested in.
That's awesome. I guess for you, Joetta, when you also read the findings, what revealed itself, or what did you recognize sort of from your own conversations with your colleagues, or even conversations or questions you had within yourself as you were reading these?
I think first and foremost, I found the results an encouraging reminder that focusing on these things does matter, and that it's not touchy-feely, oh, just get in there and do your job kind of thing, that actually long-term success and engagement and better ideas and better work and better collaboration can come from incorporating the fact that we are all humans into how we work together. And anyone who knows me, I'm obsessed with humans. It's the only thing I ever want to talk about. I'm in data, but it's only in so much as it serves me to tell good stories about people. And so I was very happy about the focus on that. And I also, it was a lovely reminder also, with the study really breaks down in some cases some differences we've seen between like generations of cohorts. And I think there are two interesting things happening in those differences that I was very excited to see. And it is the first is just a reminder that we are human, and at different ages, we tend to be in different life stages that have different levels of complication and impact on us, and that we sometimes have different varieties of work experiences in our past, and that we may evaluate the same situation differently and focus on different things, in part because of what's happening in our lives holistically as people, in part because of personality or generational differences, and in part because of the distribution of experiences we're comparing today to. And I thought that was a really interesting element. And I'm very passionate about, if we're going to be stuck at work full time because of the way
Yeah.
the system is organized. How do we make this fulfilling, engaging, meaningful for all kinds of people who prioritize different things?
hmm And we spend a lot of time there, right? So we should make sure that it is an environment where we all can thrive. Uh, so with that, let's sort of zoom in on something that feels a little, actually both aspirational and maybe a little elusive, and that's this whole idea of vitality. Um, I'll sort of start with you, Eileen, but talk to me about this idea of vitality. What does it mean if it's even possible? Our study defines vitality as sustained energy, right? Meaningful contribution, optimism about the future, and the capacity to really perform at a very high level without depletion. So let's talk a little bit about that. Are people really equipped for this new reality?
And when you explain the definition, I found my body just going, whew, like taking like a deep breath, because it almost sounds like it's not possible, right? It just
hmm
sounds so lofty and so aspirational, particularly in the times that we're in now. And I believe that it is possible, but there's so much work that has to take place in order to get there. And in a time right now where we're really in that unprecedented stage, and we've been in an unprecedented phase for a very long time. And the problem is that we're in a perpetual state of change, and there's a compounding effect of all this change. And if we just go back a few years and we start with COVID was massive. And then on top of COVID, there's all the geopolitical environment and all the things that we've been navigating over the past several years. Obviously, it's longer than that, but just for this block of time. And then after that, then you add in the AI transformation. Like nobody has a chance to breathe. Like there's this
Right.
constant sense of like whiplashing around all
hmm
of the change. And so when I think about it, it's not so much about each of these events, but it's about our ability to navigate and be prepared to endure and thrive and achieve vitality through all of this, because there's something else that's going to be here in short order. It's probably already playing out as we speak. In fact, I'm pretty sure that it is. So how do we prepare ourselves, and what kind of mindset can we be in order to move through it, and not
hmm
necessarily resist it? And I think that's the work. And I like to use, before we sort of got to the sense of vitality, I think about it from the place of well-being.
Yeah.
And a lot of like words matter here. Like a lot of times we interchange like wellness and well-being. And now we're going to layer in vitality, because I think vitality comes after well-being. So wellness is really about like our physical, like are we sick? Are we healthy? Like that's a very tangible fix kind of mindset. But well-being is the mindset of like, are we showing up with a sense of like, can do it? Are we,
Yeah.
regardless of the circumstance, no matter what's thrown our way, can we just be even and level through that state? And when you add in vitality, that's like a whole nother layer to it, which
hmm
is thriving. Maybe it's even the equivalent of being in a flow state. And I think there's a lot of work to be done on an individual level to understand what makes us tick, who are we in the
Yeah.
context of our environments, and then be around people who are going to support that, and help us navigate that. Because as long as we're congruent with ourselves and we're not at odds with ourselves, we can reach that state of vitality. But we're so bombarded with a lot of external factors that it takes us off of our center. So as long as we can maintain our center, which is not so easy, but there are some foundational work that can be done, I think we can get there. It's not easy, but it's going to take these types of conversations, and it's going to take a lot of visibility and vulnerability in order to achieve it.
Yeah. This is, I think, underneath everything, it's really a conversation about change. Uh, Joetta, when we think about the absence of time to adjust before the next big thing arrives, there just doesn't seem to be that moment to breathe, to reset. What do you think that does to people?
I think one of the things it can do to people is put you in a state of anxiety or panic that you are going to be meaningful and make it along for the ride and the
Hmm.
journey. And I
Yep.
think one of the things that I wish we talked more about, honestly, is how easy it is for people who are doing something day after day to accidentally connect their worth in the company to the specific tasks they're doing. Whereas I just don't see it that way. I see, like, if
Yeah.
all of the tasks changed, which, as we've noted, they seem to keep doing, as all of the tasks change, what I really want to help people that I work with and that work on my teams really latch onto is, what is it that you bring to this new scenario? What are the skill sets that allowed you to succeed at the tasks you were doing? And how are you going to think about bringing those to the net new tasks? Because we can learn how to do new things, but if we don't feel like, I believe that if we don't feel like we belong and are contributing something meaningful ourselves, not just filling a particular role, we slip into a state of, I'm worried, and so I need to hold on to the tasks I'm doing with an even stronger death grip. And in my mind, that actually moves you away from being able to provide value, continue to enjoy, get positive feedback, be part of the conversation. As things are changing, people want to be part of that change. But if they feel they're attached to tasks that are not part of that change, it can be very, and haven't understood your skill set can be deployed in so many ways in this new future. And if they haven't made that bridge or been encouraged to see that bridge or helped to build that bridge, that then the death grip on the old tasks and the insistence on refusal to change can is really just an expression, I think, of anxiety. And so
Right.
trying to understand what's the root cause that's leading to this fixed pattern and this resistance to change. I think when you get that right and you get people to understand the value and the power of who they actually are and what they bring to the role, not just the tasks they do, that you can unlock a lot of that and get people more comfortable with the discomfort of change. And we all have very, and also remembering that, look, some people experience change as much more of a rattling thing than others. For some reason, tomorrow, if we're doing something totally different, okay, I'll figure it out. It's fine. But I have
Right.
to remember that that's not everyone's emotional experience around change, and making sure
Mhm.
that they're equipped with clarity on how their value is going to feed into this next system if they can make the change with us helps to encourage that bravery. And I think that's, to me, that's where the vitality comes from.
Yeah. As you were speaking, I was thinking, wow, it really sounds like, vitality isn't just about energy. It's about how we adapt almost without burning out, right? And I think this really flows directly into fostering resilience. It seems to me that the idea of resilience is sort of at the root of this research and of work today. When pace sort of outruns recovery, it's like everything else just breaks. I'll go back to you, Joetta. You know, we see in the data that organizational resilience is built on honesty, right? Following through on your commitments, addressing mistakes openly. You know, what does that tell you about what people need from their companies right now? Because I don't think we really talk about that.
Yeah, I think so. So I think when we get into trouble is when we get in the position, if you're in a leadership position and you're like, I have to put on a brave face and I have to tell everybody that everything's fine and that everything that's happening makes total sense and is the right thing for the business and the plan, and we have all the clarity we need and this is going to be great. Like, that can sound like encouragement, but your employees actually are in the same place you are. They are seeing the same things you're seeing. And
Hmm.
I personally find that you can be very honest and transparent and frankly a little snarky about some of the dumber things, and it actually helps with vitality and engagement. But it's
Hmm.
not about it's not about trashing corporate America or like, making fun of the leaders above you or any of those things. It's about acknowledging that there are factors and complications and frustrations that simply emerge from being part of any system. And I'm not going to pretend that those frustrations don't exist. I'm going to acknowledge them and talk about which parts are under our control and what can we do with the control we have. What parts are just part of swimming in the sea we're swimming in, and we can talk about how dumb it is, but it's not there because no one knows it's there. It's not there and we're pretending it's not there. It's a consequence of the sea we're swimming in. But how do we find the places that we control so that we can still continue to feel that attachment? And I definitely agree with you that energy and vitality are not the same thing. I can have a very high energy day and push through a lot of difficult things and get home and be like, oh, I don't know how much longer I'm going to do this. Or I can have a day where actually I didn't sleep that well. I came in, I connected with coworkers, we solved hard problems, we saw each other, we actually contributed together based on our different strengths, and we moved something forward, and and come home and be like, well, I don't know if we accomplished anything yet tangible for the business, but I'm in and I'm going to show up tomorrow with this energy. And I think that it is really important to keep a sense of that, because if you get into the sense of learned helplessness and detachment and, oh well, it'll be whatever it's going to be, you've really lost that vitality, because now no one is contributing to making the pivots. Nobody is contributing to bringing everyone along and making sure we still feel connected.
Yeah. And it is about, sometimes that team effort and, who's leading the charge, and that almost goes into sort of this individual leadership angle. In our data, we did see that the qualities that people value most in leaders were actually personal. Being authentic and grounded and showing genuine care. We see that the best leaders are actually those that are curious about the betterment of their people. I always believe that there is levity in leadership. There's empathy in leadership. The more you bring yourself to the table, the better you can help your team. Eileen, what do you think? What has to be true inside a leader for that curiosity to exist? Because it is a lot to balance. You have expectations at work. Clearly, you have objectives and goals, but then you also are fostering building this team and the commitment. So that individual leadership is very important, that you show up every day with that just to help the team.
It's a massive responsibility when you think about it, because you're regardless of the level of leader you are, you're responsible managing up, you're managing across, and you're leading down. And it's a serious responsibility, because you have such far-reaching impact on all of those stakeholders. And when I think about leading, it's inhabiting your leadership within you, not performing it. And I think that performing it goes to a little bit, Joetta, what you've been talking about. Like, we've all seen, let's just go we know there's a lot of gaslighting that happens inside organizations, which is, I think, what you were referring to a lot of, Joetta. And we underestimate what people see, what people observe, and what people experience, because we're so sort of stuck in our own sort of echo chamber of what we're trying to navigate. But to get to the question of what does it really take within a leader, it's congruency. If you're out of personal alignment, and I use the word synchronicity or congruency, you're leaking out all this stuff around everybody, because you're stuck navigating that incongruency of yourself. But once you have that alignment and you're in the right job that works for you, that you're flowing from, and you're really jazzed by, you can put in 15-hour days and go home and feel totally jazzed and electrified and want to do more of it. But if you're out of alignment and doing work that's so against who you are, you're depleted, you're exhausted, you're frustrated, and all that's going to leak out. So I think it's really important to find that work that really aligns with who you are. And sometimes that is much easier to do than others, and sometimes people feel like it's not possible. But I think that lack of congruency is really what causes the burnout, because you're willing to go the distance when you have that alignment. You're in that flow state and you're going to thrive because you're just in it. You don't have that inner conflict. So for leaders, it's really taken an honest look about how you're showing up. Where are you in alignment? Where are you out of alignment? I remember while I was still the head of people at a previous job, I knew that I was out of alignment. And I saw it in the way I was showing up, and I saw it how people were mirroring back what they were getting from me. And I realized this is not good for anybody. And I had to work through my own inner stuff to kind of get to a different place. But I was very aware of that mirroring effect, because what you put out is what you're getting back.
Yeah.
So that congruency is really key.
And I feel like, just as a slight add-on to that, is that congruency, you notice, doesn't mean positivity. And I think that's really important, because I think there can be like a toxic positivity, like your boss being like, and it's great and we're succeeding and everything's wonderful. And you're like, and maybe that's like how they feel, but it also has to be congruency with the reality that people are experiencing, so that you're actually indicating that you see what they're doing and you understand what's happening and you understand the impact it's having on you. Because if you end up in that bucket of like, I love my job, I worked a 15-hour, I'm more of a 9-hour a night sleeper, so I could never manage that. But if I was like, when I'm really engaged, I'm very productive, I'm very much delivering, I'm very excited about tackling the next problem. But if you let that tip over to like, so don't have any complaints and don't vent, and like, you know what I mean? Like, and I don't think you were saying that. It made me think of folks being like, oh yeah, but well, what about this? And you're like, no, that's acknowledging a known problem. Like it's disingenuous for me to turn to my team and say, no, that's wonderful. You should love that. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not saying congruency is like that.
not at all. No,
Right.
not at all.
Congruency means you can navigate, the shit storms that you're having to navigate, right? Like, because there's a lot of them. But if you have that, then you're more apt to be able to navigate it in a way that's sort of beneficial for everybody. Because,
But see, Eileen, but you're aware. So I think when you're talking about leaders and their own sort of personal synchronicity, right? Do you think people are aware that they're leaking this onto other people? Or is it just sort of invisible? Like you said, you knew it was happening, but a lot of people don't.
I think my personal opinion is that the leaders who are most aware make the best leaders. For sure. And they continue to be curious about themselves, and they're continuously looking inward in order to deliver outwardly. And I've seen leaders who are so unaware, and it's damaging to themselves, let alone to the people around them. Yeah. So that's where the work is. And that's where I feel that organizations tend to shortchange that need for reinforcement and support and personal development of leaders. I think they think because you've gotten to a certain point, you don't need anything. They need it more than ever, because they're navigating all that responsibility, all that tension, not only for themselves, but for the organizations, for the teams, for the clients, the customers. I mean, it's like a seriously impactful role. And a lot of times companies only bring in that resource to fix something. And I think that's the wrong model. It's not about fixing. It's about supporting and enhancing and meeting your leaders where they are for the times that they're actually leading. That's not a fix it. When you go into fix it, it's already too late, in my opinion. Why not bring the resources along as part of the journey, as part of what it takes to be a leader? It's like putting gas in your car. You got to do it all the time.
Yeah.
In order for it to run, it's the same kind of thing.
And it's so hard. I've been fortunate to have been a leader in several corporate entities, and I'm originally from the South. I don't know if that matters, but there's a level of patience, that I have, and it was probably because I was brought up with my grandparents, right? A generation gap. They were slow to anger. They really listened. And I sort of grew up in that environment. But sometimes you get into this work environment and you lose it. So the question is, how do we reclaim like who we are? Because sometimes I find myself just acclimating to the environment around me. People are pushing and pushing and pushing, and the organizations, they're up on the walls. We're talking about our values and our mission, and we just state them, but we're not living them. It's not an embodiment in the organization. So there's always sort of a reclamation of sorts that you have to do as a leader. Like, wait, who am I? What do I uniquely bring to the table and to this team and this environment? And am I basically talking the talk, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love the word. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I love the word embodiment because it might lead us to another part of the conversation, which is the influence of AI. But the ability to embody all your values and living who you are and showing up with that, I'll use the word authenticity, is what it's about. We've all been in experiences, I would imagine, Joetta, you see it also in your work, where you've been transacted. That doesn't really feel very good, right? And you don't trust it. And the difference between being transacted and being embodied is really what we're talking about. I think the challenge is, and the question is like, how do we get there?
Yeah.
And that's the work. It's the personal work. And, some people might think that's a little woo-woo, but at the end of the day, if you're constantly adapting to the external environment and the external conditions around you, you're a little wobbly. But once you have that congruency and you can stand on solid footing with that conviction, like you become a force, you become immovable, you can navigate whatever it is that comes your way. I think it's the ability to do that personal work. I don't know any other way around it, to be honest. I don't know if you guys feel differently, but I don't know what else there is.
No, and I think a part of that too is as leaders, you have to hold other leaders accountable too. You have to say like, no, that is not how we together do this. Like we have decided the kind of place we want to be working in, and we have to model that behavior. And you're not doing that right now. And you have to be brave about that and that isn't about, oh, this person's no good and I don't like this thing about this person. It's about really recognizing. And I'm very fortunate. I have the colleagues that I work closest with are like amazingly talented people who often have we have vastly different but complementary knowledge bases, and we have a uniform agreement of like what we want, the kind of place we want to work. And we work hard to reinforce that and support that in each other. And I think that cross communication and holding each other accountable is also really important too, because you're only human. Things are going to get on your nerves. You're going to get upset about things. You're going to maybe not use your best behavior. You're going to let stuff leak all over, and you're going to need to have someone say, what are you doing right now? What are you aiming for? And you have to be like, yeah, what I'm doing isn't going to get me what I want, because I know what I want and I know what it feels like to work with leaders who share that vision. And this isn't moving me in that direction. And that requires trust with your colleagues and listening to them and speaking honestly to them as well.
And also showing vulnerability. I think being vulnerable with everyone around you is really how you can get at building trust and modeling what it is we're talking about. Yeah. I did a workshop several years ago, and people afterwards came up to me and they were like, "Oh, Eileen, I want to hear more about your journey, and how did you get here?" And I was sort of blown away by the reality of what they didn't see. They saw me in a present state. They didn't see me over the years navigating, all the shit and, crying in the bathroom or having to stand up to leaders. So there's a lot that does occur that people don't see when they're looking up. So it's our job and our responsibility to show that vulnerability, not just to stand up like we know it all, because we certainly don't. But the vulnerability, I think, is quite powerful.
Yeah, I think, leaders, we really influence the emotional climate, whether we realize it or not. And, when you think about it in that context, I want to sort of talk about sort of two converging ideas, right? The push to return to office and sort of the reduction in sort of those little perks that we have normally become accustomed to in the office. The study was pretty clear. The space itself needs to make the case for coming in, right? By facilitating collaboration and exchanging of ideas, an area to help provide focus and giving people a way to simply recharge. And the people were clear. If you are going to ask me to come in, the space is going to have to be a communication of how you value me as a person. Eileen, what does that mean? I guess practically, to make the office an elevated experience rather than having it feel like a mandate, which some places have made it. They've said it's a mandate.
Right. I think it's
Yes.
still, I think there's still a mix of like coming
Yeah.
in. I don't know. I don't personally think it's 100% going to be all in, but I think it might be industry specific.
Yeah.
I don't think it's really about the perks, because the perks to me are somewhat superficial and can be a Band-Aid for what's not happening inside an organization, because they're nice, they're quick fix. It's like the immediate gratification of being able to get food or go for a drink or whatever some of those types of perks are. But how do we create meaningful, collaborative, connecting, recharging experiences? Because the work itself, we know it can be done at home. Like there's certain roles that can't be done at home, but we do know a lot of the work can actually be done at home. So what are you building in the sense of communal experiences that are connecting people? And I think this is where some of the creativity comes into play. Like, how do we create those environments? I don't think there's a tried and true sort of best practice at the moment, but I do think there's a lot of opportunity to elicit from the employees who are coming in, like, what do you want to see? What is it that you want to experience? What will be meaningful for you to come into the office to connect? Because at the end of the day, it is that, we're connecting on a human level. So it's thinking about how to create an experiential opportunity that they're not going to get sitting at home.
Yeah.
And that's
I mean,
going to be unique to
Joetta,
the company.
yeah, do you think, Joetta, that organizations are hearing it? Because, many hold the opinion we can be productive anywhere. So if productivity isn't the argument to come in, then what is?
Yeah, I think so. I think some of the historical, like big tech office decisions that were made probably a few decades ago now. Gosh, time is weird, but like have created a sense that like that's a marker of a dynamic workplace. But I always feel like it's like one of the possible tools you have to bring to bear to communicate what matters and communicate that you're invested. But it's definitely not the only way. I mean, one of the most fulfilling jobs I ever had was, I think it was like a abandoned conference room where they stuck together a bunch of old desks in a parts distribution warehouse in Compton. And it was a terrible facility. Terrible. Like, and I don't mean a terrible facility. It was a great parts distribution warehouse. It was just in no way prepared for the work that we were doing. But because we had true ownership, curiosity, impact on the organization, flexibility to determine our approach to answering the business questions. It was a magical time, but the facility was a disaster. But you had those other things. And so I think of the facilities and the office and, to your point, the perks and all of these things, they cannot replace true appreciation of the humans that are doing the work and the things they bring to bear and their unique perspective and talents. It can't replace that, but it can be a signal of your appreciation of those things and your desire to foster that relationship. So, I think we just are undergoing, that's why there's just white walls behind me, as we're in the midst of undergoing some refreshes to the space. And there are, being able to have sufficient conference rooms, places to go have a private conversation. So having some of those phone booths, like, it's not that, ooh, you have phone booths. It's that I acknowledge that when you're at work, you're not just at work. You have humanity. Maybe you want to talk to your doctor. Maybe you want to, like, we're not tracking your mouse moving on your to make sure you're never leaving your computer. You're going to need to use the
Right.
bathroom. You're going to need to, like, I think it's part, what are you using the space to communicate, and is it consistent with the other things you're doing? Because if it's inconsistent and you're just like, but we gave you coffee, who cares?
Right.
Like, I'll
Right.
go buy my own coffee. I want to stay home and be away from all this toxicity. But if you actually are building an and in reinforcing and fighting for the right culture, the office and facilities become a way to signal that and signal the value to the workers, I think. Because, yeah, I mean, we crushed it during COVID. We were very productive, very connected, very, like, it was not a difficult time to get good work done.
Yeah.
And so the argument of like, oh, well, you have to be in person in order to have, like, that doesn't, like, let's be honest about why you want us in
Hmm.
person. Let's just be honest
Right.
about that. And then let's figure out the ways to ensure that that is consistent with our overall goals.
Do you think there's a difference when we talk about sort of retaining and bringing in younger talent? Because our data shows that younger workers, Generation Z and Y, they are significantly more motivated by calm environments and spaces that sort of connect them to the larger work. So I think we also have to look at the type of talent that we're trying to bring in and what sort of spaces are we creating for them where it's attractive for them to want to come in as well.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, healthy environments is a big trend right now. And the
Hmm.
need for nature and natural light and things that are so, we really took advantage of during COVID more so than ever before. Like, that has to be part of a facility. There has to be sort of some natural, organic energy and specifics, tangible within the office. Like, when I think of some of these
Yeah.
corporate spaces and those fluorescent lights,
Hmm.
like, I'm not in a corporate space anymore, but when I go in and I am assaulted by those fluorescent lights, like, how did I put up with sitting in the office for as many hours as I did with those lights
Yeah.
like beaming down on me? Like, there has to be
Yeah.
another alternative. And I think the
Hmm.
younger generation is going to demand that the environments meet those expectations of a more natural, organic, healthier environment.
Yeah. It sounds like space isn't just where we work, right? It shapes how we feel about work. And then that feeling, whether we're energized, safe, or drained, that will directly impact something that every company says they want more of,
Yeah.
which is creativity, right? And, creativity is where humans, I think we still have an edge, right? The question is whether we're building the conditions for it or sort of burying it under this operational noise. So I'll just toss this out for either one of you. Does fostering creativity in the workplace even matter in 2026?
Yeah, I mean, I think of course it has to. But I'm sometimes surprised by the impact is not scaled to like the fanciness of the perk or the it's when it's understanding what are you trying to foster and what are the things that actually foster that, which is not always, like an on-site masseuse and free movies and I don't know, a cafeteria with free amazing food. It's not always
Yes.
those things. It can be those things. I'm not saying it's not. I'm just like, we have something in our space that even as we've moved spaces recently with all the updates that we have really maintained because it really fosters it fosters interaction and knowing each other, because I think the creativity comes from knowing each other and who you work with and which brains to put together to pull off
Hmm.
something new, which brains to pull together to navigate forward. And so we have something in our space that was not at all started by me. Like some younger folks on the team were like, we had whiteboards lining the walls and they're like, can we write on those? And does it have to be work related? And I was like, well, don't do anything that's inappropriate, but go to town. And they do something now, and it's been going
Yeah.
for over a year, and everyone looks forward to it. People who walk through our space join and participate. The whiteboards that cover our walls every week, they list a series of just questions. And it might be like your least favorite chore. It might be the show you're binging right now. And it's just a series of questions. And then a separate group started a quiz of like fun facts about nature and the world
Yeah.
and they write them up and put the options and everybody votes on what the responses are. And then at the end of the week, they circle what the right answer was. And these are not hefty investments in facilities. This is permission to be a little silly and engage with each
Mm-hmm.
other. And I think there are ways at all levels to be able to do that. And it doesn't always have to be. Now, if in the midst of that, the lights are flickering and there's noise and it smells bad and you can't keep stuff at your desk, like no amount of sharing fun questions is going to fix that. It has to be built on that foundation. But I think absolutely even small things about facilities can foster the engagement and trust that leads to creativity.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the things humans still do better than AI, right? Of course, we emoting, connecting, and that creative thinking. Um, they map almost exactly to the top of sort of creativity drivers, in this data. And I really don't think that that's a coincidence. I think what you both were describing are very human conditions for creativity. And I think that makes AI an interesting contrast. So, I mean, let's go there.
Let's go
Because
there.
AI, it's the backdrop of everything, whether we like it or not. So, if you go a little deeper, into AI, one thing in the data that really jumped out to me, employees who believe their organization is investing in their relevance are the ones who believe in their own futures. Eileen, people are under pressure to use AI to make their work better, but many really don't know what that means for their role. Do you think we are contextualizing this transition or simply just sort of mandating it?
I think it obviously depends on the organization.
Yeah.
I think it's more of a mandate than contextualizing because I think people are using it, but I don't think the dots are being connected. And how does it influence the work that I've been doing, and how does it influence or how is it setting me up for the work that I now need to do?
Mm-hmm.
Because the tool itself, like it is, I mean, it's kind of, it's easy, right? Like it's such a helpful partner, if you will. Like we all think of it in that way. I mean, so many times I'm seeing emails like, "Oh, my BFF Claude," which is kind of makes me a little crazy, but it's it's a great tool. But what's missing is now what? Like, how are we helping our teams plan for what's coming next? Because right now there's so much fear permeating throughout the organization that I'm going to lose my job. I'm going to be replaced. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what's next. Maybe some jobs are going to be replaced. Absolutely. But it's a huge opportunity to think about how do you make yourself irreplaceable as a human? Because right now, like we're still humans, and I think we're going to be around for a really long time, right? And so there's a huge opportunity to think about how do I leverage this, and what is it that I'm now bringing to the table as a result of having more time?
Mm-hmm.
And for the people who can start to really be thoughtful and curious about it and start to explore, the human system part of this, that is what's so important now more than ever. And I think we're going to see a lot more opportunities on the human, I'll just say sort of the human services, the human systems work. There's going to be a lot of opportunity because AI can't do everything people say it can do, in my opinion, right? Like, can't hold people accountable. It's not going to help make decisions. There's still like discernment that's needed. There's judgment. There's like a lot there. So it'll be interesting to see how the generation that's using AI now in grade school, high school, college, that generation of people, they're being prepared. They're going to start to help us figure out what's going to be the future of work.
Right. Right.
I can't wait to see. I don't know what the answer is, but I can't wait to see what's coming because that's how it's
Yeah.
going to be formed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I
It's
think, oh, sorry, go ahead, Lolita.
no. I wanted to say it's so true that, how leaders cultivate their skills. How do we help give them the edge in this sort of human plus AI equation? And it is AI produces the results, but the leaders are the ones that sort of make those results sustainable and scalable. Yeah. Let's go on, Joetta.
And I was just going to say, I think the way you think about and talk about AI with your teams and really matters too. And it kind of goes back to my earlier point about like if your identity is at work is tied to the tasks you do versus the talent and experience and discernment you bring, I would be worried because
Hmm.
if there are a number of tasks that humans are doing that humans are the worst solution for. Like, we're bad at things that we have had to do in order to unlock other things at work. And, for at People Inc., like, we very loudly and clearly and stand by this, like, we're publishers, we're never going to write content using AI because
Hmm.
the reason we have a valuable set of brands that people trust is because they're tied to humans who actually understand something and can be
Right.
discerning and can be creative and can link unrelated ideas in new ways. And so that stands, but the way that cascades down into like my team is not the editorial team, so that declaration doesn't really bridge to like how are we going to and not use AI. And so the way I've been doing a lot of talking about it and thinking about it and acting on it with my team is asking people to think about the moments in their job when who they are and what they know is irrelevant. Let's find those and see which of those are good to have AI serve. If you're
Right.
bringing an element of yourself to the job and who you are actually influences the output, that's the worst place for us to jump in and be like, let's figure out how AI can do that. But
Right.
we do a lot of like pulling syndicated stats from an online dashboard interface. It's like no one needs to have a personality or much knowledge other than where the buttons are to pull
Yeah.
what percentage of adults 18 to 24 show up on this particular site.
Yeah.
But understanding the brand perspective, where we're moving, where the struggles are, where culture is at this moment, where we think we might be headed, to understand what the patterns in the numbers mean is a different thing. And so for me, it's really a lot about and some people make this leap immediately, and some people need a
Right.
lot of very aggressive encouragement to
Yeah.
understand that like you're worried about losing your job, so you're clinging to something that AI could do well, but your job is actually more all encompassing than that. Your
Hmm.
value doesn't come from your ability to pull those stats. Your value comes from your ability to make sense of them and talk to the business about what it means and help define strategies. And so that's the way I think about if we do it right.
Right.
AI helps us unlock the places we have known for a very, very long time that humans aren't the right solution. But it was too expensive or timely or time consuming or required deep specialty that isn't widely available in order to execute on that. I think AI unlocks some of that and the ability, but I very much personally, this is my personal point of view, believe it should start with those opportunities that have always existed and now the solution is in place to make it possible versus this, you see a lot of this like, oh, I'm going to fire everybody and I'll just hire a bunch of AIs. I'm like, you don't understand anything about humans. Like, okay,
Yeah.
great, go to town, have fun. But I do believe if I'm like, you don't have to reformat that thing that was a terrible time sink in your life every day. Now you get to spend that time thinking and doing and being creative. That's where AI can help.
It's hard though. Like I agree with everything you're saying, but people who have been functioning a certain way for so long, as you
Yeah.
say, some people will get it and naturally gravitate towards it. And there's a lot of people who are just deer in the headlights right now because they
Oh,
don't know
absolutely.
even how to do it. And
Yeah.
that's where we come into play as leaders is to really help. And some will and some won't, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point is that, you bring the right solutions and you have the right viewpoint. It doesn't mean everyone succeeds. Like it's never the case in any environment, under any context. Some people, maybe they're in the wrong job. Maybe the job has run its course. Maybe they've lost the vitality and it doesn't matter what you can give them because there's been a break and you can't come back from that. Like all of those things, I think it's important to be realistic about those things.
Yeah, and the conversation keeps coming back to something simple but not easy, right? The human experience at work. As we sort of roll into final thoughts, this has really been a conversation about the future of work, but more importantly, the feeling of work. And, if we get that right, I feel like everything else follows. And it is about, checking yourself, making sure you're bringing your best self to work, bringing that empathy, making sure that you are not leaking, negativity into others. And it's something that we all have to continue to focus on day in and day out. Joetta, Eileen, I really want to thank you both for making time today. This is one of those topics that could go hours because there's just so much experience that you both bring to the table and the data that supports it. I think we all have opportunities to be better and a better representation at work. So on our next podcast, I want to let you know that we are going to discuss how consumers feel about the role of AI in advertising, search and discovery, and really how advertisers can help them navigate in this moment as well. To our listeners, if you liked today's episode, which I know you did, and you want to learn more about why people do the things that they do, please continue to subscribe to the HumanTell podcast. Thank you both so much for your time today. And until we speak again, I'm Lolita Morrow. Stay curious.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you both.